Tonight, we're going to talk about cases that feel like dreams gone wrong. The kind that start ordinary, familiar, harmless. A shopping mall, a yearbook photo, a small town road that everyone has driven 1,000 times. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. Until suddenly, everything shifts. A detail you overlooked becomes the one thing you can't stop thinking about. Someone disappears. Someone is found. A secret sits quietly in a house that always looked safe. I'm going to take you through these stories the way you'd hear them in a late-night conversation with someone who can't sleep either. We aren't rushing. We aren't panicking. We're just unraveling the threads together, slowly, carefully, until the whole picture reveals itself. And the first story tonight begins with something deceptively simple. A note. A single line written on torn paper. A line that said, "Back in 10 minutes." A line that was supposed to explain everything, but ended up explaining nothing at all. On a warm afternoon in 1996, the kind where the air feels heavy but not unpleasant, a 17-year-old girl named Leah left her part-time job at a small clothing store in her hometown. She was smart, well-liked, and responsible in that way teenagers rarely get credit for. She'd show up early, stay late, and somehow always looked composed even when folding endless piles of denim. 3 people saw her last: a coworker, a customer, and someone no one has ever confidently identified. But I want you to picture the scene slowly. The store is quiet. A soft hum of fluorescent lights. The faint scent of dryer sheets left over from new shipments. Leah stands behind the counter, tapping a pencil against a receipt pad because business is slow and she's bored. Her hair is tied back. Her keys dangle from a lanyard. It's the kind of scene that looks like it should fade out gradually, not end abruptly. Around 1:15 p.m., Leah tells her coworker she's running next door to grab a sandwich. Totally normal. She's done it 100 times. But this time she pauses at the door, turns back, and scribbles something quickly on a scrap of white paper before taping it to the counter. Back in 10 minutes. It's nothing dramatic. It's not written in fear or haste. It looks like what any employee would write if they planned to be right back. But the thing about innocent notes is they only stay innocent as long as the writer returns. Leah never did. At first, nobody panicked. Customers wandered in, saw the note, wandered out. Her coworker assumed she ran into a friend and got distracted. You know how teenagers are. Time feels slower for them because they don't yet realize how quickly it disappears. But minutes pass, then 20, then 40. By the time an hour has gone by, the note isn't reassuring anymore. It's confusing, almost taunting in hindsight. Like whoever wrote it didn't understand how much weight those 5 small words would eventually carry. Her coworker calls her cell phone. No answer. She checks the sandwich shop. Leah never arrived. She checks the parking lot. Leah's car is still there. Keys missing. Wallet missing. But her purse, the purse she always carried, sits untouched inside the store. When police arrive, they treat it like any missing teen case. Maybe she left voluntarily. Maybe she got a ride. Maybe she's avoiding someone. These are theories investigators cling to early because the alternative feels too heavy to admit out loud. But as they interview locals, something strange emerges. A witness swears they saw Leah talking to a man near the alley behind the plaza. Not arguing, not distressed, just talking. Another witness says they saw a car they didn't recognize parked with its engine running. A dull-colored sedan. Possibly gray, possibly silver. Memory is foggy, like all memories are when we don't yet know which details matter. Nobody wrote down a plate number. Nobody paid close attention. Why would they? At the time, nothing looked wrong. Inside the store, detectives study the famous note. And here's where the strangeness deepens. The handwriting looks like Leah's, but the spacing is slightly off. The downward slant on the letter K doesn't match the examples from her school notebooks, and the tape securing the note was torn unevenly, not the way she normally cut tape with scissors from the drawer. Is it her writing? Probably. Is it perfect? No. But the human mind wants clean answers. It doesn't like probably. Over the next 2 days, volunteers search trails, ditches, and fields around town. Helicopters circle. Dogs track. News stations broadcast her photo until it becomes wallpaper in the community. But then, on day 3, a discovery finally comes in. Not from a search team, not from police, but from a jogger on a wooded path 2 miles away. It's Leah's lanyard, the one that held her store keys. Snapped. Left in the dirt like something, or someone, pulled it off fast. Investigators return to the store, now with a heavier energy. The world always feels smaller when you realize danger didn't come from far away. It walked right into your routine. They re-examine the counter where the note was taped. Under bright forensic lights, a partial print appears. It doesn't match Leah. It also doesn't match anyone in the store. A stranger touched the note. A stranger stood close to the counter, close to Leah, close enough to leave just enough of themselves behind to become the story's ghost. As weeks pass, the case freezes into one of those mysteries that sits heavy on people, the kind you can't solve but also can't forget. The note becomes a symbol, printed on posters, repeated in podcasts, dissected by amateur sleuths, because everyone keeps asking the same question. Did Leah write that note freely, or did someone tell her to? Imagine being her co-worker, replaying the day again and again. Did she notice anything off? Did Leah hesitate? Did her smile look forced? Humans remember emotion better than detail, and emotion that day felt ordinary, until it didn't. Years later, detectives admit something quietly in an interview. If the note wasn't written under duress, then the 10 minutes weren't supposed to be frightening. But if it was written under duress, then the 10 minutes were never real. There is still no definitive answer, just one girl, one clue, and one unfinished walk that was supposed to take only 10 minutes. You ever notice how some towns seem too quiet, but not in a peaceful way? More like the quiet is covering something up. Willow Creek is one of those places. It is a tiny mountain town with only one road in, one grocery store, one old gas station that still uses the kind of pumps where the numbers click instead of slide. A place where everyone knows everyone, or at least they think they do. And for years, the residents whispered about the same girl, the same disappearance, the same unanswered question. What really happened to 16-year-old Clara Ridge? To understand why her case haunts people, you have to understand Clara. She was ordinary, not mysterious, not troubled, not running away. She was the kind of teenager who volunteered to walk elderly neighbors' dogs because she liked the quiet. She took photos of trees like they were celebrities. Her notebooks were filled with doodles and half-written poems that she never showed anyone because she thought they were embarrassing. Nothing about her life hinted at danger. But danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it steps out of the shadows quietly, just to see if anyone notices. It was a chilly Friday morning in late October when Clara didn't show up for school. Her mom, Diane Ridge, assumed she had missed the bus. Her dad checked her room, expecting to find her half asleep, earbuds in, ignoring her alarm like most teenagers. But the room was empty, the bed perfectly made, and Clara never made her bed. ever. At first, the Ridges thought maybe she walked to school. Then maybe she walked with a friend. Then maybe she decided to take photos on the way. But by noon, the school called. Clara never arrived. The first search was polite, calm, small town calm. Neighbors looked behind sheds, inside barns, along the creek bed. Everyone assumed this was a misunderstanding, a mix-up, a missing teenager who would walk through the door holding her camera and apologizing for causing stress. But by nightfall, the temperature dropped, and so did hope. Sheriff Marcelin took over the search, and this is where the case gets strange. Because the sheriff asked a question no one expected. When was the last time anyone other than the parents actually saw Clara? Suddenly, the room fell quiet. Students had seen her Monday. A grocery clerk thought he saw her Tuesday. Maybe. Her neighbor's kid said he saw her Wednesday, but later said he might have been wrong. By Thursday, no one was entirely sure. That meant Clara might have been missing longer than anyone realized. The next discovery only deepened the mystery. A hiker, hours after midnight, found something in the woods beside Willow Creek's old wooden bridge. Something small, blue, and dirt-covered. Clara's camera. It wasn't broken. It wasn't smashed. It looked like someone had placed it carefully on the ground. Inside were 7 photographs taken the morning she vanished. 6 were normal. Sunlit trees, water reflections, the sky turning pink. But the 7th? That photo sent the entire town into panic. Because Clara had taken a picture of herself, a selfie, standing in the woods. And behind her, blurred but unmistakable, was a figure. A tall silhouette, standing still, watching her. But here's the part that Willow Creek can't agree on. The part that splits residents even now. Some people swear the figure looks like a man. Some swear it looks like a woman. Some say it looks like someone wearing a hood. Others say it looks like an animal shape standing upright. And then there are the ones who refuse to describe it at all. Sheriff Marcelin called in state investigators, but the woods offered nothing. No footprints, no clothing fibers, no broken branches, no dropped items. It was as if Clara and the watcher in the photo had both walked into the trees and vanished into air. But we're not done. A week later, a fisherman found something near the bank of Willow Creek. A ribbon. Clara's ribbon. The one she braided into her ponytail every single day. It was tied to a branch, but tied neatly, like a bow, as if someone wanted it to be found. Still, no Clara. The town entered the quiet stage of grief, the stage where people stop searching in groups and begin whispering privately instead. Theories formed. Maybe a traveler, maybe a local, maybe an animal attack, maybe Clara left on purpose. But that last theory collapsed when investigators revealed something chilling. Clara's bedroom window had fingerprints on the outside. But the prints weren't full fingerprints. They were smudges, as if someone had been wearing gloves. And one more thing. The prints were too high for any normal person to reach unless they were standing on something, or unless they were unusually tall. Theories shifted again. A stranger? A stalker? Someone obsessed with Clara's photography? Her parents still set an extra plate at the dinner table. Her mom walks past Clara's open door and talks to her out loud, pretending her daughter can hear her. Her dad has not taken down the porch light, the one he installed, just in case she walks up the driveway at night. But the case is cold. No body, no clues, no movement. Just a camera, a ribbon, and one photograph that never stays the same in your memory, no matter how many times you look at it. Because every time you look at the figure behind Clara, your mind fills in something different. Something human, something not human, something watching, And maybe that's why Willow Creek never sleeps at night. Because the town isn't afraid of the woods. It's afraid of what might still be in them. Some stories feel like nightmares, not because of monsters or shadows in the woods, but because they make you question how fragile identity really is. How thin the thread is between your life and the version where everything is quietly, horrifyingly wrong. This is the story of 14-year-old Eli Mercer, a boy who went to sleep in his bedroom on a normal Tuesday night and woke up in a life that didn't belong to him. Eli grew up in a quiet desert town, dusty roads, sunburned hills, and skies so empty they almost felt fake. He was the kind of kid teachers loved, polite, soft-spoken, always sketching little robots in the corners of his homework. His room was filled with things that made him feel safe. A model planet system hanging from the ceiling, glow-in-the-dark stars, and a nightlight shaped like a fox so the room never felt too dark. Nothing in his life hinted at danger. Nothing suggested anything was wrong. Which is why his parents didn't think twice when he hugged them goodnight and climbed into bed. But sometime between midnight and sunrise, something changed. Because when Eli opened his eyes, he wasn't in his room. The walls were a different color, a pale green instead of blue. His planet mobile was gone. His nightlight was gone. Even his bed felt too big, like it belonged to someone older. At first, he thought maybe he was dreaming. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, whispering to himself, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." But nothing changed. Then he heard footsteps, and a woman's voice he didn't recognize. "Eli, breakfast is ready. Don't let it get cold." He froze. That wasn't his mother's voice. It didn't even sound close. Before he could think, the bedroom door opened. A woman stepped inside, smiling at him like she'd known him his whole life. She looked normal, warm, completely unthreatening. But to Eli, she was the most terrifying person he'd ever seen. "Rough night?" she asked gently. "You look exhausted." He couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. She didn't seem to notice his panic. She walked over, ruffled his hair, and told him to hurry downstairs because his father wanted to talk to him before school. School. Breakfast. A father he apparently had. In this world, nothing made sense. Eli slowly forced himself out of bed, his body shaking. He walked past the woman, and she smiled at him with the same familiarity his real mother used to. Except this wasn't familiar. This was wrong. Every detail felt borrowed, patched together, like someone had recreated his life from memory and gotten small things disturbingly incorrect. When he reached the hallway, he noticed something else. Framed photos lining the wall. Photos of this woman. Photos of a man he'd never seen. Photos of him. Except the him in the photos wasn't quite right. His haircut was different. His smile looked forced. And in every picture, he stood slightly apart from the adults, almost as if the photographer had moved him into place afterward. He reached the bottom of the stairs, and the man at the table, the father, looked up with a cheerful grin. "There's my boy," he said. But Eli didn't feel like anyone's boy. He sat down in silence, eyes darting around the kitchen. Every drawer, every appliance, every corner was unfamiliar. Even the smell was wrong. Cinnamon instead of the usual burnt toast his real father always made by accident. He tried to speak. I don't live here." The man laughed, confused. "What does that mean?" "This isn't my house," Eli whispered. "These aren't my parents." The man's smile faded. A moment passed, too long, too still, before the father said carefully, "Eli, we talked about this yesterday. Remember? You promised you weren't going to scare your mother again." That sentence made something cold crawl up Eli's spine. Again. So this wasn't the first time. Not the first morning something felt wrong. Not the first time their Eli said he didn't belong here. The father reached across the table, touching Eli's hand. His voice softened into something that tried to sound reassuring. You're safe. You're home. We love you. Nothing bad is happening. But something was happening. Because when Eli glanced at the window, he saw reflections. 3 people sitting at a table. 2 adults who looked relaxed. And him, hunched, terrified, staring back like a stranger trapped in someone else's skin. He pushed back from the table. The chair screeched across the tile. I need to go home, he whispered. His mother stepped into the kitchen just in time to hear this. She looked devastated, almost wounded. You are home, baby. She tried to hug him. He stepped away. Her eyes filled with tears, but behind the tears was something else. Something that unsettled him far more than anger or confusion. There was acceptance, as if she'd already grieved the version of him she used to know. That's when he noticed the calendar, a simple white calendar hanging on the wall with the month circled in red. But the date was wrong, not by a day, not by a week. The calendar was from a year ahead, and multiple days were marked with small handwriting, dozens of entries, every single one reading the same thing. Eli's adjustment day. He backed toward the door. The mother started crying harder. The father stood but didn't reach for him, almost like he expected this, almost like they'd practiced how to handle mornings like this. Eli ran, through the living room, past the front door, down a driveway he'd never seen until the ground felt familiar again. He ran until his chest burned and his lungs felt like they were tearing. He didn't find his real house. He didn't find anything familiar. Just houses that looked almost normal, but not quite. Street names that sounded almost right, but slightly wrong. People who looked at him with recognition he didn't return. And then, a police car pulled up beside him. An officer stepped out slowly, gently, the way someone approaches a confused animal. Eli, the officer said, your parents are worried. Let's go home. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He had the sinking realization that in this world, no one knew he didn't belong. In this world, his real home might not exist at all. And that is the last confirmed event the public knows about. Because the reports, what little exist, end that morning. Some people say Eli eventually adjusted and lived peacefully with the alternate parents. Some say he disappeared again years later. Some say those parents were never parents at all, but something imitating them. But the strangest part, Eli's real parents, the ones from his original world, filed a missing persons report. A report that included a detail the public wasn't supposed to know. They said the last time they saw their son, he went to sleep wearing a blue t-shirt. But when the police in the other world found him, he was wearing a red one. There are stories that feel like they should stay whispered. Stories that do not scream or throw themselves at the world. Instead, they sit quietly, waiting for someone to listen long enough for the fear to settle under the skin. This is one of those stories. It begins with a woman named Hannah Brooks, a 32-year-old librarian who lived in a sleepy Midwestern town where the biggest crime most years was a stolen bicycle or a raccoon breaking into trash cans. Hannah lived a life that from the outside looked peaceful, predictable, the kind of life people imagine when they want to believe that quiet places equal safe places. Every morning she walked the same path to the library. Every afternoon she ate the same lunch. a small salad with lemon dressing. Every evening she brewed a cup of chamomile tea, opened a book, and read until her eyes grew heavy. Her neighbors described her as soft-spoken, gentle, almost glowing with a calm that many envied. But inside her home, in the privacy of her living room, Hannah had become convinced that someone else was living beside her. Not physically, not in any way she could point to, but in the way the air felt heavier after sunset, in the way the lights flickered more than they should, in the way her name sometimes echoed from down the hall even when she was alone. She told no one at first, not because she feared people would think she was losing her mind, but because she feared she was not. The first sign came 3 months before everything unraveled. Hannah sat in her reading chair, wrapped in a blanket, listening to soft rain against the window. She turned a page, and from somewhere behind her, clear enough to feel like breath against her ear, she heard a voice. A woman's voice. Soft, calm, almost affectionate. "You forgot me." Hannah froze. She waited for footsteps. She waited for movement. She waited for anything that would explain the voice. But the house remained still. She stood slowly, her hands trembling. She checked every room, every closet, every shadowed corner. Nothing was out of place. Nothing looked disturbed. And yet, the sensation of being watched clung to her like dust. She whispered into the silence, "Who is there?" There was no reply. For most people, that would have been enough to send them running to a friend, a therapist, a detective, anyone. But Hannah kept this to herself. She convinced her mind that maybe the wind had made a sound that resembled words. Maybe she had been too tired. Maybe the world had simply played a trick, until it happened again. A week later, she returned home from the library to find her bedroom light on. She always turned off every switch before she left. She remembered doing it because she did it every single morning. On her nightstand lay a photograph she had never seen. It was old, faded. A picture of a woman sitting in the exact same reading chair Hannah used every night. The woman had long, dark hair and a smile that never reached her eyes. Hannah turned the photo over. Someone had written in blue ink, "I lived here first." Her hands shook so violently the photo nearly slipped from her grip. She brought it to the police the next day. They examined it. They searched her house. They checked the locks, the windows, the doors. Nothing had been forced. Nothing had been broken into. No fingerprints besides Hannah's were found anywhere. The detective gently suggested that maybe the photo had been left by a previous tenant and Hannah had simply not noticed it before. A suggestion that made her want to scream because she knew her home the way a person knows their favorite book. She knew every drawer, every creak, every scratch on the floor. This photo had never been there. 2 weeks later, the voice returned. Hannah was brushing her teeth, leaning over the sink, when she heard the same whisper. Closer this time, nearer to her shoulder. "Why did you leave me alone?" She spun around, toothpaste dripping down her chin, heart slamming in her chest. No one, no movement, just the echo of her own breath. She backed into the counter, gripping it until her knuckles went white. She whispered, "What do you want?" Silence answered. The next morning, she visited her neighbor, an elderly woman named June, who had lived on the street for 40 years. Hannah asked casually if anyone else had lived in her home before her. June nodded. "A young woman," June said. "Quiet girl. Always looked like she was thinking of something heavy. She disappeared one night. police said she probably ran away, but I never believed that. Hannah felt her stomach twist. What was her name? June frowned, trying to remember. I think it was Lila. Yes, Lila Harris. That night, Hannah searched her home for anything that might prove Lila ever lived there. In the attic, tucked behind an old paint can, she found a small spiral notebook. It belonged to Lila. Inside were pages of frantic writing. She watches me. I hear her at night. She wants something. I cannot sleep. She stands at the end of my bed. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. And then one final page. If anyone finds this, please tell my mother I tried. After that, the entries ended. From that moment on, Hannah slept with her lights on. She stopped reading at night. She stopped relaxing in her favorite chair. She avoided her home as much as possible. But the presence did not stop. She heard humming behind the bathroom door when she knew she was alone. She heard footsteps in the hall at 3 a.m. She felt someone sit on the edge of her bed, sinking the mattress gently. She felt fingers brush the back of her neck. She began leaving the house to sleep in her car, wrapped tightly in a blanket, terrified of her own bedroom. She told the police again. They checked again. Nothing. Not a single sign that anyone living or dead had ever touched her. One night, after nearly 48 hours without sleep, she cracked. She stood in the center of her living room, fists clenched, tears streaming down her face. Tell me what you want, she whispered. Please, I cannot live like this. The room grew colder. The air thickened. The lights flickered. And from behind her, just over her shoulder, the voice answered, You took my place. Hannah turned. The room was empty. A week later, she vanished. Her front door was left open. Her tea kettle was still warm. The blanket from her reading chair was found folded neatly on the floor as if someone had prepared to sit, but never did. The only thing left was the notebook. A new sentence written on the last page in Hannah's handwriting. I did not forget you. But there was something strange about the ink. It had not finished drying, meaning someone wrote it within minutes of when the police arrived. Someone who was no longer there. And the final unsettling detail. Underneath Hannah's writing, faint and shaky, in blue ink identical to the note on the photograph, someone had added, Good, now stay. There are cases where you feel the fear immediately. There are cases where the danger is obvious. And then there are cases like this one. Cases that begin with something so small, so quiet, so easy to overlook that no one realizes what is happening until it is far too late. This is the story of Evan Lorne, a 14-year-old boy who never seemed to take up much space in the world. He was small, pale, gentle, and soft-spoken in a way that made adults lean in closer when he talked because his voice floated out like a whisper. His mother described him as sensitive. His teachers described him as gifted. His classmates described him as harmless. But no one ever described him as frightened. Not until the messages started appearing under the floorboards. It began with a sound, not a scream, not a crash. Just a soft rhythmic tapping that echoed through the old Lorne family house late at night. Evan lived in a creaky farmhouse built in the early 1900s. Every board groaned, every window rattled, every storm sounded like it wanted to crawl inside the walls. Evan was used to noises. He had lived in that house his entire life. But this tapping was different. It was too steady, too intentional, too much like a pattern. He first heard it in early January, right after winter break. He told his mother he could not sleep because something under his bedroom floor was knocking. She smiled and told him it was probably pipes shifting in the cold. She promised they would check it in the morning. By morning, there was nothing to hear. The house was silent. The incident was dismissed. But the tapping returned the next night, and the night after that, and the night after that. It always came after midnight, always the same slow rhythm. One tap, a pause, two more taps, another pause. Over and over, like someone trying to get his attention. Evan began sleeping with his lamp on, then with his earbuds in, then on the couch downstairs. But the tapping followed him. Even when he slept in the living room, the sound traveled along the floor, soft but unmistakable, like someone dragging their fingernails across wood. 3 weeks later, he could not take it anymore. He grabbed a screwdriver from the kitchen and locked himself in his room. He pushed aside his rug and knelt on the cold floorboards, hands trembling as he pried up the edge of the wood plank nearest his bed. He expected to find a loose nail, maybe a broken piece of piping, maybe a trapped animal. He did not expect to find a folded piece of paper. It was yellowed, crumpled, fragile with age. On the front, in shaky handwriting, were 4 words. "Please help me. Please." He screamed. His mother ran upstairs, startled, worried, already imagining the worst. She took the paper from his shaking hands and opened it carefully, her brow furrowing deeper with every second of silence. There was more writing inside, faded pencil scratches, so faint it was hard to read. "He comes at night. He stands by the bed. I cannot scream. I cannot run. Please, someone find me. Please, someone hear me." There was no name, no date, no explanation, just terror. Evan begged his mother not to put the board back. He begged her to call the police, to call anyone, to let him sleep in her room. She tried to stay calm, but it was clear the note shook her. The officer who arrived a few hours later examined the opening and told them the same thing every small town officer tells families when something unnerving happens. Old houses hide old things. Maybe it was left by a child decades ago. Maybe it was part of a forgotten renovation. Maybe it was nothing. They recommended sealing the board again. Evan refused to stay in that room. He slept on the couch. For a week, the house stayed quiet. The tapping stopped. The floors stayed still. And then something new happened. His mother woke to find another piece of paper left on the kitchen floor near the fridge. This one was newer, whiter, less fragile, as if someone had placed it there only hours before. On it, in the same unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "He is here again." This time, the police took it seriously. They searched the entire home top to bottom. Basement, attic, crawl spaces, walls, floorboards. Nothing. No intruder. No footprints in the snow. No forced entry. No signs that anyone besides Evan and his mother had been in the house. They installed cameras, motion detectors, extra locks. And for a moment, things seemed normal. But the messages kept coming. Sometimes they were under floorboards, sometimes tucked behind radiators, sometimes slid under bedroom doors while the family slept. Always written in the same handwriting, always frantic, always describing the same figure. A tall shadow standing in doorways, a man breathing heavily at night, someone whispering the boy's name. But here's the question that turned this from strange to horrifying. Who wrote the notes? Because forensic testing revealed something sickening. The handwriting came from a child approximately the same age as Evan, but every piece of paper showed signs of age damage, as if they had been sitting in dark, damp places for years, sometimes for decades. Except the ink was fresh, less than 24 hours old each time. It made no sense. Evan grew more withdrawn. He jumped at every noise. He stopped eating. He stopped reading. He spent hours staring at vents, drains, corners of rooms, whispering as if he expected someone to whisper back. One night, in early spring, everything escalated. His mother woke to a scream unlike anything she had heard from her son before. A scream sharp enough to fracture the silence of the entire house. She ran upstairs. Evan was standing on his bed, pointing at the corner of the room. His whole body shook so violently the mattress trembled. He cried, "He is in the closet. I saw him. He was watching me. He said not to. Leave. He said I belong with him." His mother threw open the closet door. Nothing. Just coats, boxes, dust. The police came again. They checked every inch of the home. They installed more cameras. They stayed for hours. But that same night, after the officers left, Evan found another note slipped under the bathroom door. 4 words. "I warned you already." His mother packed their bags the next morning. They moved in with Evan's grandfather across town. They never returned to the farmhouse, except once, to pack belongings. During that visit, Evan's grandfather stepped through the front door and said something strange. He said the house felt familiar. Too familiar. Then he hesitated and whispered to Evan's mother that when he was a child, he had friends who whispered about the Lorne farmhouse. They told stories about the previous family. A father who had locked his own son inside the bedroom at night. A child who begged neighbors for help. A tragedy people in the town refused to speak about anymore. Evan's mother tried to ask more. Evan's grandfather refused to continue. He shut down completely. A few days later, the farmhouse was torn down. The demolition team found something under the floor of the master bedroom. A wooden toy car, a marble, a set of old metal buttons, and a notebook. A notebook just like the ones that belonged to school children in the 1950s. Inside were pages and pages of writing, the same handwriting from the notes. The last sentence read, "He stands at the door. He tells me another boy will come someday. He tells me we will stay here forever." After that, the pages went blank. The town does not talk about the farmhouse anymore. No one brings up the notes. No one talks about the tapping. No one talks about the figure. Evan still sleeps with a light on. Some nights he wakes up crying. Some nights he swears he hears tapping in the walls of his grandfather's house. But every time someone checks, nothing is there. Just the memory of something that did not want to be forgotten. And something else no one can explain. Evan's handwriting now looks exactly like the handwriting in the notes. Exactly. As if whoever wrote them never really left. And maybe is using Evan's hands to keep writing. Some houses feel lived in. Some houses feel empty. And some houses feel like they are holding their breath, waiting for something. Or someone. This is the story of the Caro family. A family who moved into a house that did not simply have a past. It had intentions. The Caro family was ordinary in every way. A mother named Leah, a father named Mark, and 2 children, 7-year-old twins named Jonah and Lily. They had outgrown their cramped apartment in the city, and they dreamt of a quiet countryside, a slower life, a place where the twins could run in the yard and chase fireflies instead of dodging traffic. So when they found a large, affordable home near the woods, they thought it was fate smiling on them. The house was old but charming, white paint peeling at the edges, tall windows that let in generous sunlight, a wide porch perfect for lemonade and summer storms. The listing said the house used to belong to an elderly couple who had no living heirs, no dramatic backstory, no tragedy, nothing to warn them. But from the first day, the house felt wrong. Not dangerous, not haunted, just observant. The twins felt it immediately. Jonah refused to go upstairs alone. Lily kept asking who lived in the attic, even though the attic was empty. Leah brushed it off as childhood imagination. Mark blamed the stress of moving, but the house seemed to be waiting. The first incident came a week after move-in. Leah was unpacking dishes when she noticed a picture frame sitting on the windowsill. An old black and white photograph of a family. A mother, a father, and 2 children. She assumed it had been left behind. She almost tossed it out, but something made her pause. The children in the photo looked eerily similar to Jonah and Lily. The same haircuts, the same round eyes, the same uneasy expressions. She felt a chill. She put the photo in a drawer, and she did not mention it. The next event was small, almost insignificant. But looking back, it was the first sign that the house was not simply a structure of wood and nails. It was choosing. At breakfast one morning, Lily pointed up at the ceiling and asked in her small, curious voice, "Who is walking upstairs?" Mark set down his coffee. No one should have been upstairs. He went up, checked every room. Nothing. Silence. Stillness. But when he came back downstairs, Lily said, "The man left when you opened the door." The third incident happened to Jonah. He told his mother that someone was standing outside his bedroom window at night. A tall man, watching him. The house sat 10 feet above the ground on a hill. No one could reach that window without a ladder. And there were no footprints in the dirt, no broken branches, no signs of intrusion. Leah told herself Jonah must have had a nightmare, but Jonah insisted the man was real. The Carows tried to settle in despite the unsettling moments. They painted walls, hung curtains, filled the rooms with the warmth of their belongings. But the more they tried to make the house their home, the more the house seemed to resist. Lights flickered only when the family laughed together. Doors creaked open at night, but only the ones leading toward the children's rooms. The temperature dropped drastically whenever someone mentioned moving again. One evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Leah went into the attic to store some boxes. The attic was dusty, dim, and heavy with the smell of old wood. As she bent to set a box down, something caught her eye. A set of drawings pinned to a wooden beam. Crayon drawings. Childish lines. Faded but clear. 4 people. A family. The mother and father looked like the ones in the photo she had found. The children looked heartbreakingly similar to Jonah and Lily. But beneath each drawing was a name. And the name under the little girl was Lily. Not their Lily, but the same name. The same handwriting a child would use. Leah ripped the drawings off the beam and hurried downstairs. That night, she told Mark everything. The photo, the drawings, the patterns, the footsteps, the voices. Mark tried to stay calm, but Leah saw the fear growing in his eyes. For the first time since moving in, he believed her. They agreed to keep quiet around the children, and they agreed they needed to leave soon, before anything escalated. But the house had other plans. The night before they intended to pack, something happened that changed everything. Lily woke screaming. Not a normal child scream, not a nightmare scream. A scream so piercing and panicked that Leah and Mark sprinted into her room. Lily sat upright in her bed, shaking violently, staring at the corner of the room. Her eyes were filled with a terror no 7-year-old should ever experience. She whispered, "The house told me you do not belong here. The house said it has its own children. The house said it is time for us to trade." Leah grabbed Lily and held her close. Mark searched the room desperately, unsure what he was even looking for. Then they heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Moving toward the bedroom door from the hallway. Mark threw the door open. No one was there. but the floorboards still vibrated with the weight of footsteps that had just passed. They packed that night. They did not wait for morning. They did not explain to the neighbors. They drove away before the sun rose, leaving almost everything behind. And the moment they pulled onto the main road, Lily looked out the window and whispered, "The house is angry. The Caro family never returned. They moved 2 towns over and refused to speak about the house except in fragments, during therapy sessions meant to help the twins process the trauma. But a month later, something happened that the news reported as a tragic accident. A local demolition crew went to tear down the old house. As the walls came crashing down, workers found something unsettling inside the foundation. 4 small wooden figures, hand-carved, hand-painted, all lined up in a row. A family of 4, a mother, a father, a little boy, and a little girl. They were placed exactly where the Caro family bedrooms had stood, and carved into the bottom of the little girl figurine was one word: Lily. There are cases that feel like missing person stories, and then there are cases that feel like the world itself lost track of someone. This is the story of Micah Lane, a 12-year-old girl who disappeared in a way that even investigators could not explain. A disappearance that did not happen on a street, or in a store, or in the woods, but inside a photograph. It began in early summer. Micah was bright, curious, and always holding a camera. She loved capturing everything: insects, sidewalks, her parents laughing when they did not realize she was watching. Photography was her way of understanding the world. Her room was covered with printed pictures strung along fairy lights. Her mother described her as a girl who saw life in still frames. But something began to change in her photographs. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable. The kind of detail that makes people say you are being dramatic, that you are seeing things. The first photo was of her backyard. There was a small patch of garden, a broken swing set, and the tall cedar tree she loved climbing even though she always got splinters. It was a peaceful image, except for one detail: a silhouette, a figure standing near the tree, not moving, not facing the camera, just there. Micah showed the photo to her mother. Her mother smiled softly and said it was probably her father checking on the garden, except her father had been at work, and the figure in the photograph was taller than him, much taller, and standing in a way no human quite does, as if leaning slightly forward, as though listening. Micah deleted the photo, but the next one was worse. This time she had taken a picture of her school hallway. Students walking, lockers open, teachers trying to keep everything under control. Ordinary. But in the far corner of the picture, behind a group of kids walking to class, there was a face. A pale face. Eyes wide open. Eyes staring directly at her. The face belonged to no one at her school. No one in the district. No one who should have been there. Micah tried to brush it off. She told herself she must have captured a reflection, or maybe someone visiting the school, or even a trick of the light. But part of her knew better. A third photograph sealed it. She had taken a picture of her bedroom mirror because she liked the angle of the sunlight hitting the glass. In her reflection, she saw herself smiling with her camera raised. But behind her reflection, in the corner of the room, stood the figure again. This time closer. This time clearer. This time unmistakably facing her. Micah dropped the camera. She ran to her mother, panicked, trembling so badly she could barely speak. Her mother checked the camera, looked at the photograph, and felt the first crack of fear slide down her spine. She brought the photo to Micah's father. He stared at it for a long time. Too long. Then he quietly placed it face down on the table, and said maybe the camera was malfunctioning, maybe the phone was glitching. But Micah's mother knew her daughter, and she knew fear when she saw it. So she did something most parents avoid. She listened. She asked Micah gently who the figure might be. Micah whispered, "I think it is watching me." Over the next week, things escalated. More photographs, more appearances. The figure moved closer and closer in each image. At first, it stood near trees, then by fences, then near Micah's window. Until one morning, Micah took a picture of her breakfast table, and the figure appeared only a few feet from her, standing behind her chair. Always silent, always still, always blurred at the edges as if reality struggled to hold its shape. Micah's parents decided enough was enough. They took her out of school. They hid the camera. They banned her from taking pictures. But the figure kept appearing, not in photos anymore, in reflections, car windows, bathroom mirrors, shiny metal surfaces. One afternoon, Micah stared into the toaster and saw a face behind hers. She screamed until her throat burned. Her parents begged her to explain what she was seeing, but Micah said something that made both of them go cold. "It is not following me. It is replacing me." Her parents tried to understand, but Micah was too terrified to speak clearly. Over the next several days, she grew quiet, withdrawn. Her smiles faded. Her appetite disappeared. The night before she vanished, Micah came to her parents' room. She asked if she could sleep with them. They agreed immediately. She crawled into their bed, shaking, and whispered, "If it happens tonight, do not look at it. Please, please do not look." Her mother pulled her close. Her father stayed awake most of the night. Around 3 a.m, he felt something strange. The room grew colder. The air felt thicker, like breathing through water. He heard soft clicking noises, like a camera shutter. He turned his head, half asleep, and saw Micah sitting upright in bed. But she was not looking at him. She was looking at the dark corner of the room. Her father followed her gaze and froze. In the corner stood the figure, tall, silent, featureless except for its eyes, which were fixed on Micah with a stillness that did not feel human. Micah's father reached for her, but she whispered, "Do not move." It noticed his movement. He froze. The figure took a step forward, then another. The room grew darker with each step. Micah buried her face in her mother's arm. The father tried to speak, to shout, to stand, but his body felt drained, heavy, useless. Then the figure did something unexpected. It raised its hand. In its palm was a photograph, a picture of Micah. But in the photograph, something was wrong. Micah was standing in a forest the family had never visited. Her clothes were different, her expression empty. And behind her stood a second version of the figure, resting its hand on her shoulder like she belonged to it. The figure held out the photograph as if offering it. Micah's father blinked, and in that blink, Micah was gone, vanished, not pulled, not taken, just gone. The figure stepped backward into the darkness until its shape dissolved slowly, like fog. Police searched for months. The town organized search parties. Flyers went up everywhere. Nothing was found. But 2 months after her disappearance, Micah's mother received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Micah standing in the woods, looking older, tired, still wearing the clothes she vanished in. And behind her, barely visible in the tree line, the figure watched. The photograph smelled faintly of pine. No one knows where Micah is. No one knows what the figure was. No one knows how photographs could predict someone disappearing. But the most unsettling detail was something you could only see if you looked closely at the photo. Micah's shadow did not match her body. It was stretched. Wrong. Standing in a posture identical to the figure behind her. As if the figure was not behind her at all. As if it was slowly becoming her. Some cases feel like they start in the middle. There is no build-up, no long backstory. Just a moment. 1 second, everything is normal. The next second, something is wrong. And the gap between those 2 seconds is where people disappear. This is the story of Elena Ortiz, a 23-year-old nursing student who vanished in a way that still keeps an entire town awake. Not because of the day she disappeared, but because of the call that came that night. Elena lived in a small apartment above a bakery. Every morning she woke up to the smell of bread and coffee drifting through her floor. She would joke that she never needed an alarm clock. The oven downstairs did the job for her. Her life was busy but predictable. Clinical shifts, classes, late-night study sessions, weekend dinners with her mother and younger brother. She was known for 2 things: her loud laugh and her habit of calling her mother every single night. No matter how stressful her day was, no matter how late she finished at the hospital, she made time for a short call. Sometimes it lasted 10 minutes. Sometimes it lasted 1. But it always happened. Her mother would say, half teasing and half serious, "If I do not get my nightly call, I will assume you are lying in a ditch." Elena would roll her eyes and say, "Relax, I am fine. You worry too much." But she respected the rule. She kept the promise, until the night she vanished. The last day anyone saw Elena in person seemed painfully ordinary. She had an early morning clinical rotation at a nearby hospital. Multiple classmates saw her. She was tired but in a good mood. She talked about a new coffee place she wanted to try after her shift. Security cameras caught her leaving the hospital around 4:37 p.m. She walked to the bus stop, scrolling on her phone like any other student trying to decompress from a long day. She texted her friend at 4:45 p.m. "I am so hungry. If I do not eat soon, I will eat an IV pole." Her friend replied with a laughing emoji. Everything felt normal. She boarded the bus. Witnesses remember her because she gave up her seat for an older woman. She moved to stand by the back door, holding the rail with one hand and keeping her backpack wedged between her feet. The bus arrived near her street at 5:02 p.m. She got off. She walked toward her building. Cameras on the bakery captured her passing by the front windows at 5:05 p.m. She waved at the baker who was kneading dough near the counter. He waved back. That is the last confirmed sighting of her. 5 minutes later, everything would begin to fall apart. When Elena did not show up to her night study group at the library, her friends assumed she had fallen asleep after her shift. When she did not answer their texts, they assumed her phone died. When her nightly call did not come, her mother frowned at her phone, stared at the time on the stove, and told herself that one missed call was not a reason to panic. But she did not sleep well. She woke up several times that night, feeling unsettled, checking her phone in the dark. No notifications, no missed calls, no random late-night message from Elena complaining about exams or patients or the price of textbooks. Morning came. Her mother tried to tell herself that it was fine. Maybe Elena stayed at a friend's place. Maybe she pulled an all-nighter. Then the hospital called. Elena did not show up for her shift. That had never happened before. Not once. By noon, her friends were going door to door in her building. By 2 p.m., police were knocking as well. Her apartment looked undisturbed. Bed made. Clothes in the hamper. Coffee cup rinsed in the sink. Phone charger plugged in by the nightstand. But there was one detail that made everyone uneasy. Her backpack was on the floor by the door. Her keys were on the hook. Her wallet was on the dresser. Whatever happened to her seemed to have happened in the small space between the bakery door and her apartment door. Somewhere between the world of cameras and the privacy of four walls, Elena vanished. The town began to search. Fields, alleys, parking lots, bus routes. But nothing surfaced. No witnesses, no screams, no suspicious cars. Just silence. And an empty apartment above a bakery. The first 24 hours were chaos. The second day was worse. Investigators pulled phone records, hoping for some anomaly. A mysterious number, a last text, anything. Her outgoing calls ended with her message to her friend before boarding the bus. But it was her incoming calls that froze everyone in the room, because there was one. Time stamped at 2:13 a.m., several hours after she had last been seen. The call lasted 1 minute and 41 seconds. The number displayed was her mother's. Only one problem. Her mother had been asleep at that time. Her mother's phone had been on the nightstand, charging, untouched. She had not made that call, yet the records were clear. Elena received a call from her mother's phone in the middle of the night. Her mother stared at the printout and shook her head again and again. The investigators decided to check her phone. They found something stranger. At 2:13 a.m., her mother's phone did make a call, except the screen never lit up. The call never showed in her history. There was no missed call notification, no sound, nothing. It was as if the phone dialed on its own, connected, and then erased the fact that it ever happened. But it had happened, because on the other side, on Elena's phone, there was a voicemail. Police recovered the voicemail. Her mother listened to it first. She did not make it all the way through. She pressed the phone to her ear. There was the sound of breathing at first. Not heavy, not panicked, just present. Then a soft scraping sound, like fabric against stone. Then Elena's voice. Very quiet, very controlled, as if she was trying not to be heard. Mama. The word was almost a whisper. Then silence. A faint rustling. Something like dripping water. Her mother called her name on the recording, forgetting that it was already over, as if her response could travel backward in time and reach her daughter. Then Elena's voice again. Mama, I do not know where I am. There was a tremor in her words, but she did not sound hysterical. She sounded like someone who had already moved past panic into a cold, focused fear. They will not let me look up. Investigators replayed that line multiple times. They debated whether she said they or it. But every time they slowed the audio, it distorted slightly, making the word even harder to understand. She continued. Everything is dark. There is water. I think we are underground. We. She said we. There are others. Her voice grew smaller, drifting in and out, as if the signal itself was sinking into water. It is like a tunnel. I can hear a train, but it never arrives. More scraping sounds. A far-off metallic echo. Then something like a distant voice, but too blurred to decipher. Elena spoke again, more urgently. Mama, if they find my phone, they will know I called. So I do not have much time. She took a shaky breath. Listen. If you hear this, tell them to look below the old tracks. Not the new station. The old one. The one that closed when you were young. There are doors there that are not on any map. Then the audio glitched. For a few seconds there was nothing but a low humming sound, like an engine underwater. Then a series of sharp crackling noises, as if the microphone was being covered. When her voice came back, it sounded farther away. I do not think they know I remember this place. She laughed softly. a sad, tired little laugh. "I used to play here. You used to tell me never to come near the tracks. You said it was dangerous. You were right. There was movement, heavy footsteps, the sound of something metallic sliding." Then Elena spoke one last time. "I think they are coming." The final words were barely audible. "I will try again if I can." The recording ended with a dull thud and the faintest sound of dripping water. Police descended on the old train yard within hours. It had been closed for decades. Overgrown weeds choked the tracks. Rust ate at the metal. Faded warning signs still clung to crooked fences. Beneath the active transit system, there was a whole second layer of transportation that the city had simply abandoned. Investigators found an old service stairwell sealed behind a rusted gate. They broke it open. The air that rose from the darkness smelled like dust, mold, and stagnant water. Their flashlights sliced through the shadows, revealing a web of forgotten tunnels. They searched for days. They found empty maintenance rooms, graffiti faded by time, discarded tools, old electrical panels. At one point, they reached a platform that did not exist on any current blueprint. The walls were lined with grime. The tracks disappeared into blackness on both sides. In the silence, some officers swore they could hear phantom trains rattling through faraway tunnels, even though no trains ran there anymore. They called Elena's name again and again. Only their own echoes answered. No phone, no bag, no clothing, no signs of a struggle. Just an underground world that the city had forgotten. Audio experts examined the voicemail. They confirmed that it had not been tampered with. There was no sign of editing. The strange glitches seemed more like a weak signal than manipulation. They tried to identify background sounds. The dripping matched underground water leaks. The echo matched large concrete spaces. The distant rumble could have been modern trains in upper tunnels. Everything pointed toward the old network beneath the city. But they never found any physical trace of her. It was as if the tunnels had swallowed her whole. There is one more detail that keeps this case alive in late-night forums and whispered conversations. When technicians pulled the voicemail from her mother's phone, they noticed something strange in the metadata. The call connected at 2:13 a.m. It lasted 1 minute and 41 seconds, but the recording timestamp did not match. According to the internal clock buried inside the audio file, the message had been recorded at 5:05 p.m. the previous evening, the exact minute Elena walked past the bakery windows, the last time anyone saw her alive. Theories exploded. Some believed the voicemail was delayed by a network error and delivered hours later, but no similar glitch had ever been recorded on that network with that delay time. Others believed that wherever she was taken, there was no cell reception, so the message only sent when her phone briefly regained a signal deep underground. Some believed something darker, that the message, for reasons no one understood, did not move forward through time normally, that it hung in some static place until the exact moment her mother was half asleep, drifting in and out of dreams, vulnerable enough for the universe to place this last echo of her daughter into her hands. There was no way to prove any of it. What they did know was this: the last thing Elena did, in whatever place she was trapped, was exactly what she did every night of her life. She called home. Her mother kept the voicemail. She never deleted it. Sometimes she plays it on low volume late at night, lying in bed with the lights off. She closes her eyes and imagines that Elena is somewhere with a signal just strong enough to break through now and then. Police eventually closed the active search. The tunnels were sealed again. New fences were put up. Warning signs were replaced. But for the people who live in that town, the sound of a late-night phone ringing hits differently now, because they know there was once a call that came in the middle of the night, from a place no one has found, from a girl who listened to her mother so carefully that even when the world turned upside down, she still tried to call and say, "I am here. Please find me." And somewhere under the city, in the cold darkness of those abandoned tunnels, the echo of her voice might still be bouncing off the walls, waiting for someone to listen. Some mysteries feel like they happened far away. Some feel like they belong to another country, another century, another world. But this one happened on a quiet street. A street with trimmed lawns, chalk drawings on driveways, and wind chimes that were always just a little too loud in the evening breeze. This is the story of Brookwillow Lane, a place where the children stopped aging, and no one outside the neighborhood noticed until it was far too late. Brookwillow Lane was about as ordinary as any cul-de-sac in the suburbs. 12 houses, one small park, a single entrance road that curved gently like an arm wrapping protectively around the community. Families moved here because it felt safe, predictable, comfortable in a way that made people feel like they were building their futures on solid ground. But beneath that sense of comfort was something else. Something no one recognized at first. Something slow, gradual, and deeply wrong. It began with Mason, a boy who should have turned 10 that summer. Should have. But for reasons no doctor could explain, he still looked 8. He had the same haircut, the same baby face, the same missing tooth, the same height down to the inch. People joked that he was a late bloomer, that he had the good fortune of looking young for years to come. His mother laughed it off, until it became impossible to ignore. By the time Mason should have been 12, he still looked 8. When he should have entered middle school, he still fit into the same Spider-Man pajamas. Doctors ran tests, blood work, imaging, endless evaluations. They could not explain it. His growth charts froze. His hormone levels stalled. His bones showed no signs of aging past the age of 8. He was physically trapped. It would have been a medical anomaly. Just one strange case. But Mason was not the only one. Across the street lived Ella, who had celebrated her 6th birthday 3 times according to the cupcakes her mother baked each year. Next door lived Jordan, who had been 7 for so long that his parents stopped marking the date entirely. Over the next 18 months, 9 of the neighborhood children stopped aging. Stopped. Completely. No one outside Brookwillow Lane believed the parents at first. Doctors blamed faulty memories, misfiled records, stress, denial. But the children were living proof. Smiling, playing, unaware that they were becoming part of a mystery that would eventually be sealed away by officials who refused to speak about it publicly. The first sign that something more sinister was happening came from the children themselves. They began talking about the quiet man. At first, it sounded like imaginary friend territory. Kids invent characters all the time, but every child described him exactly the same way. Tall, very thin, face too pale, eyes too dark, wearing something that they called not clothes, but shadows. He never spoke, never moved quickly, never approached. He just stood at the edge of the park, silent, still, watching. Parents dismissed it until one night, Mason woke screaming, insisting the quiet man had been standing in his room when he opened his eyes. His mother checked every corner. Nothing. But dust on the windowsill had been disturbed, in a room no one had opened for days. A research team eventually became involved. They ran environmental scans, soil sampling, radiation tests, everything. They found no toxins, no contamination, no medical explanation for why 9 children had stopped aging. Except for one unusual detail. Every home on Brookwillow Lane had unusually low electromagnetic activity, almost like the entire street sat inside a bubble where natural patterns were being drained or dampened. The research team theorized that maybe the environment was impacting the children's biological clocks. But when they tried to present this idea, the local officials shut the meeting down. They did not want panic. They did not want attention. They did not want outsiders flooding in to investigate. Brookwillow Lane became a secret, a contained anomaly. But the problem was not slowing. It was accelerating. Because the children who stopped aging also began to change in other ways. They stopped sleeping normally. They would lie awake for hours, eyes open, staring at corners of the room as if listening to things no one else could hear. They grew quiet, withdrawn, emotionally distant, like their personalities were fading. Some parents reported seeing their children standing in the backyard at 3 a.m, facing the woods behind the neighborhood, completely still. When touched or shaken, they reacted as if waking from a dream. One mother found her daughter sitting in a tree, legs dangling, hair blowing in the wind, humming a melody she claimed she learned from the quiet man. No one took her seriously until multiple children began humming the same tune. A tune no adult recognized. A tune none of them remembered being taught. Then came the missing time. The children began stating that entire hours had passed without them remembering what happened. They would blink and find themselves in a different room, or outside, or standing by their bedroom window. One child told her father in a flat and eerie tone, "I was with him again." When asked who, she only said, "The quiet man is teaching us how to stay. Stay, not grow, not leave. Stay." One evening, the entire neighborhood lost power. The outage lasted only 9 minutes. But during those 9 minutes, every child who had stopped aging vanished from their rooms. Panic erupted. Parents ran door to door screaming names. Cars pulled out searching every corner of the block. 9 minutes later, the lights flickered back on, and every child was back in their bed. Except their beds were damp, their hands covered in dirt, their feet stained with mud, their hair matted with something that smelled like the creek behind the woods. When asked where they had gone, the answers were chillingly consistent. We were with him. He showed us where the roots begin. He said the world above is too loud. He said we belong to the dark now. Investigators asked, was this a person, a creature, an hallucination, a shared delusion? But the children described it with the same unsettling certainty. He is not a person. He is something that comes before people. He does not grow older, so we do not either. Authorities stepped in. The neighborhood was studied quietly and quietly suppressed. Families who wanted to leave were relocated and signed non-disclosure agreements. Families who wanted to stay were asked to follow strict observation guidelines. The story never reached the public. But the most disturbing detail came from something discovered long after the families left. A city planner reviewing old maps found that Brookwillow Lane was not supposed to be a residential street. It had originally been zoned as a utility corridor, then a test site, then something labeled simply as restricted. The plans were altered, the papers cleaned. The neighborhood approved despite the warnings. When the planner revisited the earliest blueprint available, he noticed a faded note written in pencil in the margin. Do not build here. Something old is sleeping. No one ever located the original author. Today, Brook Willow Lane is quiet. Too quiet. Families returned to their routines. Children eventually began aging again, but slowly, unevenly, as if catching up with borrowed time. Some parents insist their children still hum the strange melody when they think no one is listening. Some swear their kids still stand in the backyard at night, staring into the woods. And there are rumors online, buried in late-night forums, from people who used to live on that street. They say the quiet man is still seen, not often, but sometimes, always at dusk, always at the edge of the woods, always standing perfectly still, as if he is waiting, as if he is patient, as if one day he expects the children to return to him.